With the player in place, it's time to position the enemy. So we want to use our enemy artwork. So with that, we'll see that we have all of this that we can work with. I could retype it, but I'm going to instead copy paste. So I copy paste all of those variables. Now I'll put that in. Now as I do that, I have to remember that we have to switch that to int. If I don't, well, look at what happens. I'll just pretend I forgot to do that, and then we're going to see how we run into a problem later when we work with it. So now let's populate all of these values in here as we go to put in our project. Current frame is going to start out at 0. Our offset X is going to start out at, so I'm going to just grab the ghost because it's easy to tell when the ghost is facing up, down, left, or right. So I need to count over. The first column is 0, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That gives me my offset I'm looking for will be 7 times my width. And now our offset Y is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, so then it would be 4 times my height. And we'll play with these numbers to verify how they are working as we try and do it. And right now, you can see how I'm getting an error message because offset is an integer and I'm multiplying it by a float. So the error message right here, it says float does not match with type int. So we have to be careful of that. So when we see that red, know that it's an easy fix by changing that property back to an int, and then we're in good shape there. Now, continuing in order. Now these total frames for my loops are 3 instead of 4, so we'll put that in. And then we will set our current row will be equal to, and we'll just start it out at 0, because then we use our offset to figure out exactly which row we're working with as we go to do this. And then our source X will just start out at 0, and our source Y will start out at 0. Because we calculate these properly later on. And finally, we need to do our time-based variables. So say hold is equal to 0, and our delay will just start out with 4 and see how that works to see if that gives us the value that we're looking for with it. Now, this is where we need to, I'm not going to worry too much about updating yet because they're not moving. That will update and turn our enemies into animating sprites when we add in chasing so that they start chasing us around the game board. But in the meantime, we do need to put in our update information on this. So we have hold. It's going to be equal to hold plus 1. Use the modulus math operation here, and then divided by our delay. Then we are going to need to set it up so that we say if hold is equal to 0, and then inside of that we go current frame is equal to current frame plus 1 modulus math operation total frames. So remember that, like, I'm using this sprite sheet, the total number of frames for each cycle, each direction animation is 3. Now you could potentially have a sprite animation that each of the animations have a different total frame. So depending on whether you are walking, running, jumping, attacking, ducking, each of those has a different total frames. So your loop would be changing dynamically based on what is going on. That's a little more complex kind of code to put into it, but it is certainly possible to do things like that. So making that background fill for the rectangle a little bit more transparent. Now finally we can throw in our copy enemy art, and then we do our source X and we offset it by our offset X, source Y, offset Y with height, then X comma Y comma width comma height. Similar to what we've done before. And we can see how the ghost loaded. So that's good. Now let's play a little bit with this offset and see what happens. So if I change this offset, actually I think I chose the wrong one when I said 7. We go 6, and yeah, we're still at the ghost. But if I go 5 for my horizontal offset, now when I do that, we'll see that it pulls up the bat. So I'm getting the final frame of the bat. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the bat, 6 is the ghost. So that's why we need to have that at 6. Now if I change my offset Y here to a 3, instead of the ghost, we're going to, I believe, get the girl to show up instead with her up animation. So this is how we're able to verify indeed that we are finding the correct frame for it. So now we have the player artwork, it's animating, we have the enemies there, they're wanting to animate here as part of it. And if we go into our draw loop here, we can see the enemies. Part of why they're not animating is we never added that functionality in. So let's add in that update and we will see, at least we should see that we should see a little bit of animation starting to happen. I'm also going to eliminate the original enemy because we don't care about that one anymore. Because we're only going to care about the enemies that we put into our array. So let's just comment all of those out. So now we should end up with 2. Oh, and then we're trying to find out if they're intersecting. Let's put that intersect inside our enemy loop here, but now it's not, it would be enemy square bracket I, so it's the one we are trying to work with. So no more red, that's good. But we do have one additional component that we have to put into our update here. We'd have to update X or source X and source Y, so we're not always copying the same first frame, which I forgot to do that here. So source X is going to be equal to my current frame multiplied by my width of the sprite. So current frame 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, and then we offset that by whatever the offset is based on which creature we're trying to render. And then our source Y will be equal to whatever row we are currently in, and we multiply that by the height. Currently we'll start out in the top row, so now if we run it, we'll see that the ghost is walking. Now we should only have 2 because I got rid of the non-array based enemy here. And if I modify the row, let's just go from that, we'll go to 1 here. So 0 makes it go down, 1 is going to make it change direction that way, 2 will make it change direction the other way, and finally if we put in a 3 we should see it change direction one more time. And it's good to practice all of these things before we start putting in the chase so we know that these directions are all working, because if we get any out of bounds error messages, so we're trying to choose something that it can't find. So if I said row 4 here, we can say, oh, didn't work. So either we get error messages or we get problems happening. Either way, we want to make sure that things are behaving. So now we have our animating enemies. We have the player animating when we are moving through here. And our next activity will be to make it so that the enemies try to hunt us down in our little map.